In the Microsoft Ad Center group. And today we're going to talk about a day in the life of a click. This is the part 2 of the talk that Erin began in the previous session. She gave more of an industry overview of where things are going and some of the good challenges we have in automating what is still largely a manual process. What I'm going to do is go through actually what happens in the platform and start describing more of a data flow perspective. We're going to start to answer the questions of what goes on in an advertising ecosystem. What kind of technologies sit underneath it? Are these technologies that you're familiar with? How do we go about developing these products as we think about this? Where is it going? How can you get involved? What are all of the things in this picture? I work in Ad Center and I run the development team that does the billing and customer and account management for all of our search and display business. And so when I joined the team a couple years ago, I came over from Live Meeting. So I've been doing software as a service for about 6 or 7 years now. And there's a lot of similarities between those businesses. You could think one way to start thinking about an advertising platform to get a mental picture of it is it's an e-commerce system for a service. You're not buying something that ships in a brown box. You're buying an ad that ships on the web. And there's a lot of them. And we have to go measure those things. So that's a good construct for thinking about it. And as a guy that does billing, I need to understand all of the various pieces and how they fit together because I'm kind of at the end of the line and I need to figure out where does the data get authored, who does what to it. And when I showed up at Ad Center, this is the kind of picture that greeted me. And by the end of the talk, I actually hope that this picture is one that is easy for you to interpret. This will not be the learning tool, though, that we use to get there. By way of furthering my introduction, those are the pieces that I'm responsible for in our online ad business in terms of development, design, deployment, etc. One way to think about billing is it's a couple $2 billion, a nickel and a dime and a dollar at a time. So we actually have rivers and rivers of this data that we need to account for. Before we dive in, though, it's good to get a level set on what some of the terms are. There's a lot of jargon in the advertising business, and I don't want to throw out CPC and CPM and publisher if those don't make sense to folks. So what we're going to go through is just some terms about who are the actors and the parties in the ecosystem. What do they do? What do they care about? I've put the ecosystem there in the middle. You can think of that as the platform. And on the right-hand side, excuse me, on my right, also your right, advertisers. These are folks that buy ads. This is primarily a business-to-business transaction. You don't see a lot of consumers out there buying ads. Consumers are typically the eyeballs on the far left of the picture. Names that you all know, these are advertisers. Brand names that you're aware of. A lot of them use agencies to optimize their campaigns. Agencies are a very active set of players in this industry. They help people if your job is to make cars or sell products, you may not necessarily know how to mine millions of people and find the segments that reach the people you want. As Erin alluded to in the previous talk, you can't just make a single creative, throw it on TV, and reach everybody you want to. It's a very fragmented space, and we need to go after very highly targeted sets of this. Agencies are one of the best ways that advertisers get to those audiences. Publishers. This is a broad term and is poorly defined. It means a whole lot of things. And for this conversation, it means anybody who has inventory for sale. You could be online in the content business. And here are some examples of people who create things that people want to read. So people go to these sites to learn something, read about other people. Some people in this room might be bloggers with your own contextual ads serving next to the content that you do. Online applications is another place. Search itself is an app. You give it instructions and it tells you something back. Email, calendars, these are all ad-funded and free these days. Non-browser applications is an area where there's a lot of room for growth. If we think about non-browser applications, Windows Live Messenger is an example of a Win32 app that shows ads. Okay, that's an interesting metaphor for a large untapped area we can go after. These are also publishers, though. The publisher here is the software author and the service behind Windows Live Messenger. And that software author as publisher is a new construct. It's an interesting one. So on the left, again, we've got publishers who have eyeballs for sale. On the right-hand side, we have people trying to reach them. And in the middle, we've got an ad platform trying to connect the two. Types of ads for sale. Here we've got a lot of conversation about what is an ad? What is display versus search versus content? How do I make sense of these things? So if we start with the top here, we've got banner ads, rich media. This is commonly called display advertising, as Erin alluded to. One of the key differences among these various types of advertising, in addition to the way they look, is how they're bought and sold and targeted. Banner ads, you'll often find people doing brand campaigns. I don't care if you click on it. I don't care if you click through and buy something. I want you to know who I am. I want my brand to be very aware to you. I might care about actually having you click through. In this particular example, I want you to go to my site and do something, and I might pay for it differently. Most of these ads are purchased on a negotiated basis, and this is a process that requires people to talk to each other and decide what the price is that you're going to pay. Contrast that with search. In the search example, the user has actually self-disclosed something about their intent that I can use to target. In the previous example, we have to mine it. We have to derive it based on your cookie history, where you've been. Based on where you've been, I think you're a male 18 to 32 who likes cars and sports, and I'm going to make sure that an ad that's relevant to those is shown to you. But you never actually typed anything. You could be anonymous, you could be unauthenticated, and I still need to be able to do all of that. In search, you actually told me in this example, I care about books. Am I just researching, or am I actually ready to purchase? Maybe I don't know that yet. If we track you over time, we can see where you are in the funnel potentially. But here we can use the information you've given us to target the ad to you. So it's an interesting kind of behavioral targeting where if you do something, if you tell me something about yourself, I can give you more interesting data. Content ads, or contextual as they're often called, matches up the content of the site that you're on against the type of ad it's going to show. So what you've self-disclosed here is your destination. If I'm on a technology site, and this is an example of a tech blog from one of my colleagues, technical ads are primarily what show up there. We've got an example from AdSense. We've got an example from our own contextual product that's in pilot mode right now. So they actually go out, scrape the site, read the content of it, and derive keywords. So there's no searcher, there's no typing in search. There's a derivation of content that is matched up against advertisers who say, I want to bid on these kinds of keywords. Another area that is a little more nascent is local and mobile advertising. In this example with search, I'm looking for pizza in Seattle. So I've told you two things about me now. I want pizza and where I am. So that's really valuable. Advertisers now who are local to Seattle can say, I want to target this particular region, and I'm willing to pay more when I know somebody's lat long, when I know where they're at. Sorry, latitude, longitude, where you're at in a geo sense. If I know that you're 5 blocks from my store, I'll pay a lot more for that ad. I might even give you a coupon on your smartphone so that you can come in and actually close the sale. Because not every sale is a book in a box sold online. I might need foot traffic in my front door to close the sale and stay in business. So local and mobile attempts to close that loop. And as we look at the data flow model later, you'll actually see how we can close the loop on that, and you can track ROI even on physical sales as opposed to just purely online sales. An area that's still largely offline today, print, TV, radio, we've seen some pilots in that space, but primarily this is all offline and newspaper. These are changing slowly. The buying habits here are what's actually preventing the change. People still want to go negotiate and buy that expensive thing. They're not trusting it to an auction. You could envision a newspaper as a web page that refreshes its content once a day. Hit F5 once a day. I can still go do contextual advertising there. I can still do ads that are more relevant to the content on the page. So there's definite opportunity there, but it's still primarily looking forward. What are some of the ways that people pay for ads? What are the pricing models that are at stake here? CPM, or cost per milla, or 1,000 impressions. This is most common in display advertising. Negotiated generally. Common values, 10 cents for completely untargeted. You're just on a website and I know nothing about you. Here it is. Here's an ad for anything you can imagine. $20 might be an expensive segment where I know that these are people, based on their cookie traffic, were in my shopping cart last night and they had an HD TV in it. Right, so if a publisher knows that, they could actually create an interesting segment with lots of lift, and you'll get a lot more return for that. CPC, cost per click, this is the prevalent model in auctions today. And auctions, commonplace mostly in search and content ads. The user actually has to click on the ad for something to happen, for the event to occur. This could be anywhere for a nickel for a cheap keyword up to several dollars for a single click, depending on the value of the keyword and the bid density. We'll see a couple of examples in a minute. And for CPA, this is cost per action or acquisition, depending on what you read. And that one means they actually did something when they got to your site. So not only did they click on the ad, They went to your website and did something that you care about. Could be filling out a form, a survey, could be buying a product, could be anything, reserving a flight. The action is defined in this case by the person selling something. And that's something we can also track throughout the life cycle of the system. This tends to be a lot higher in value. You tend to see a lot of impressions making some clicks that end up making an acquisition or a few. And the value is often dictated by how much money you would make on such an acquisition. So those are all over the board. They tend to be high value things. What's a click worth? These are some values These are freely available numbers in Ad Center right now for search advertising. I just went in and pulled a few up. If we look at a few of these, they tell some interesting stories. Sometimes, the more you tell me, the more it's worth. So a diamond ring is worth $1.24 for a single click. That's what an advertiser is willing to spend for a single click. Diamond engagement ring is $1.53. So you tell me even more, wow, I'm going to bid more for that because I think that's more valuable. Some cases it doesn't work that way, though. Hotel's $1.44. Hilton Hotel is very specific, but it's not worth anywhere near as much. And the phenomenon we're observing here is bid density. Not as many people are going to go, not as many advertisers are willing to say, I will pay money for the Hilton Hotel keyword. Right? Because if you're not Hilton, that's not very interesting. You know, if I'm Marriott, I might go fishing over there and try to lure someone away, but for the most part, I'm down there competing in the hotel. And if we look at the bottom one, Tokyo Hotel, it's worth a ton. But it's also still general enough that all the hotels are participating in that. So we see that that drives the price up. This is the auction behavior. Here's another example. These are both high value, both high bid density. And if we look at the bottom one there, even in this market, there's still a very high price. So there's also some inherent notion of what is this worth to me as an advertiser? If I actually get this click, I'm going to make potentially a large margin on this user. And if one of every N people that clicks on my ad actually comes to my site and buys, it's still worth it for me. So it tells an interesting story. So now, with that as a quick primer, let's jump into what actually happens in an ad ecosystem. What are some of the technologies at play, and how do we actually think about this? So this is an attempt to make a visual model. We're going to walk through search, content, display, and some futures, and start to describe a day in the life of a click. So we're going to start here in customer management. And if we go back to our e-commerce analogy, what we're looking at here is this is sort of the provisioning step of a service. You come in, you self-declare who you are, you give us a credit card, you say, I'd like to do advertising on your site. We get you set up, we get you provisioned into the cloud, and now you're ready to move ahead and tell us about your campaign. And what's a campaign? A campaign is an advertising term for your order. If we think orders and order items in e-commerce systems, we're all familiar with those. This is an order from you, the advertiser, to us, the cloud, on what is your intent? What would you like us to do on your behalf? Perhaps you have a B&B, and you want to drive traffic to your website so people come visit your B&B, bed and breakfast. You run a small hotel. You're a small advertiser, perhaps. And you create a campaign and say, how do I actually draw people in? What are people going to be searching on that would make them link up to my site? And that's where tools like KSP, or the keyword services tools that we have, will help people who don't really know. Look, I think I'm in travel, I'm in B&B, and I'm on the coast. Generate a bag of keywords for me that I think people might search on, and I'll look up bids for those like we saw in the previous slides. I can research what the prices are and start fine-tuning my campaign. Other things that we do, these are primarily text ads at this point. We don't see a lot of image ads alongside search. Primarily, we're looking at text. And users enter the keywords, the bids, ads, ad text, destination URLs, and targeting. For example, am I looking at a specific geography? I only want to target people in the Northwest or the Southwest or wherever. I want it to run from this date to this date. Our campaign management system, actually, if I step back and describe some of the technologies in here, the front end, the box represented by campaign management, is UI layers built on ASP.NET, pretty standard ASPX pages. There's an API layer there as well, HTTPS, or a secure connection for talking to our platform via the APIs. And later on in the deck, I've got some examples of what that looks like. Beneath that, stateless mid-tiers for scale, and then a heavily partitioned database. Standard SQL Server, but in this case for campaign, very heavily partitioned. And why is that? We have literally billions of keywords in the system. And when I first joined Ad Center, I thought, billions? You trying to pull the wool over my eyes? There's 400,000 words in the English language. How do you get to billions of anything? Well, these are phrases, remember. What we were looking at a minute ago in the keywords was phrases. Now imagine every permutation of every book title and CD and ISBN and SKU number. You start to get the picture of how big this is. And these aren't just rows in a table for reporting. This is not an OLAP. This is OLTP, and these bids change fast and often, especially with big retailers who have deep catalogs. They don't come in the UI and do 400,000 updates in a Saturday. They have jobs that measure ROI at night and inject changes really fast. So this is, while these are standard SQL servers, they do have to be heavily partitioned out for scale. So that's one of the ways we address those challenges. We move on. Now there's this notion of editorial. It's an interesting concept. What's editorial? Isn't that where a newspaper editor goes in and edits your content? Well, not quite. In our world, editorial is about risk management. Are you using the system or are you abusing the system? Are your ads actually relevant to the target page? Or are you advertising something that is misleading and the target page is a phishing site? And so we need to filter out either inappropriate or illegal behavior. And ultimately what we want to do is ensure that there is a high level of relevance so that as the person using search, the eyeballs way out on the far left, we haven't quite gotten to them yet, that their experience is good. When I search on something, if I see ads, they should be meaningful to me. An example of something that was not very meaningful to me, I grew up in Florida, and so I pay attention to hurricane season. And I searched on Gustav, which was one of the names of the storms. And one of the other search engines, top one, was a shopping site, said, get Gustav here. They had clearly just taken the dictionary and said, I'm going to bid on everything. I came back to our site, top labeled ad was, get your hurricane preparedness kit here. Ah, okay, now that's relevance. That's interesting to me. And that's something we'll talk about in just a minute. Actually, we'll talk about that right now. The delivery engines. This is part of the secret sauce of an ad platform. These are very, very specialized, finely tuned machines. These run a real-time auction in single-digit milliseconds. So they can't even store stuff on disk. They have to push custom structures all the way up into memory. There are clusters of these things running 64-bit because they have like 64 gigs of RAM in every machine. And there are highly partitioned structures that run the auction for every advertiser who's bidding on the same keyword as you, who still has budget left, who meets the right targeting criteria, in the right geo, lat long, time zone. All of those criteria match, you participate in that auction, and there you go. All of that happens in single-digit milliseconds. Pretty amazing stuff. This is the part that is one of the highest value adds and sort of the secret sauce of any one of these systems. They also perform a budget pause. Unlike we'll see in negotiated, where there's a goal of once I serve N number of impressions, I stop. In an auction, we could deliver way past your budget if we're not careful. If you just keep participating, we could overshoot, and that wouldn't be a good experience for the advertisers. So they'll actually listen in and see as your budget decrements and shut you off and say to make sure that you don't overshoot too much. The ad calls in this example are coming in from Live Search directly. A user typed a phrase. Perhaps it was bed and breakfast on the Pacific Coast, and your ad shows up. What we see on the bottom page, just above the word click, is there's a listing of all the ads. How do we know what order to show those in? Is it just top to bottom on bid price? There's actually another factor that's in there, which is the estimation that someone's going to click on that ad, which makes it's a measure of relevance. How often do people find this ad interesting enough to go click on it? So it doesn't matter if you bid $100. If that's something nobody's interested in, it's going to start moving down the rankings. So this history of click-through percentages, actual clicks, all keywords across time for all advertisers is something else that the delivery engines do manage. That they actually do have to push to disk because it's enormously large. But the results of it, as they go over it with algorithms that we get from AdLab's research and other places, push up into the delivery engine so that at runtime, your relevance is known, and when these ads show up, we see them in the right order. So now at this moment, nothing billable has actually happened. Right? If we're on a CPC basis in this case, and for the moment, let's just keep search to CPC for simplicity. We can do CPM in the near future, but for now, just showing these listings is not enough to take any of your budget away as an advertiser. Until somebody clicks on it, that's when a billable event has occurred. Question? Yes. CPM is you're paying for the impression, cost per mille or 1,000 impressions. CPC is cost per click, which means the user actually had to do something. And CPA is cost per either action or acquisition, depending on what you read. An action is defined by you as an advertiser, something that's meaningful to you. They made a purchase, they filled out a form, that sort of a thing. So now when that click actually happens, we have to send you through redirect servers because that click happened way out on the other side of the cloud in the user's browser. on their machine. I can't hear that. So it has to come through a redirect server so we can write it down, and then we send them on to the advertiser's site. And at this point, we write log files, lots and lots of log files. We actually have tens and tens of terabytes of these every day. And a terabyte isn't such a scary number anymore. We've got large fractions of terabytes on our home machines under our desk, and half the disk is full. But it's generally full with video or music. This is terabytes of plain text. And if we look at it, what's in a log? What do we actually choose to write down at the moment a click happens? And this is a very partial representation. And it's also scrubbed. So if you look at the IP, yes, that's localhost. That's not what it really was. We actually write down a number of things. Some of these might be the anonymous ID. If you're an unauthenticated user, I can still track you with an anonymous GUID. And if I keep that cookie persistent and track you over participating sites, I can learn about you and give you targeted ads, even while completely respecting your privacy. If you've authenticated with us via Passport because you're using Windows Live Hotmail or some other participating service, I might know more about you. I might be able to persist a deeper or a richer history. A whole bunch of other things in here as well, like what were the keywords? What actually got searched on? We can see some measurements in here. The last one, round trip time. We can actually make sure we're hitting our SLA, and how are we doing on this? So this is a quick snapshot of some of the data. And this deck is available to all of you on the hard drive. So I realize not all of these, some of these are eye charts. You'll be able to look at these in more detail offline. And now enter the world of click fraud. What do we do with all of these? Not all of these clicks are good. Not all these clicks merit billing somebody. So if we can detect that there's a high likelihood that a robot or a bot was actually out there performing the clicks for whatever reason, we can filter those out. So there's a black box down there that didn't render super well here next to the fraud logic. That's not something I can talk a whole lot about, but we actually remove in real time many of the clicks, or if there's some fast offline, put credits back in the system to make advertisers whole when we can observe that there have been botnet attacks or traffic that's otherwise not humans. And why do we care about traffic that's not humans? As an advertiser, you don't want to pay for that. They're never going to convert. They click on that, they deplete your budget, and they don't buy anything. Okay, that's a bad experience. We need to protect against that. So now how do we parse all of this stuff? If we've got terabytes of log files, you don't just dump them into a SQL server and hope for the best. They don't really fit. So what we have, this is another area, sort of a secret sauce in the platform. And this is an area where we're moving in the direction of some of the stuff you might have seen this morning. We have a grid computing solution here that was developed by Microsoft Research, where we have the ability to take a workload, in this case terabytes of log files coming in, and parcel that work out over a very, very broad array of machines. And what those machines do, it's not just a matter of, here, read these log files. They have to talk to each other, because what we're doing here is compression and joins and aggregations. So this is a very large-scale ETL process where I need to know in the past, say, n number of minutes for whatever period I'm compressing, that same advertiser had all these clicks. They might have come in from various places. I need to put them together and compress them so that I can report on them. So let's say it's a 20-minute or an hourly grain. In the past hour, there were 10 clicks on your ad. And the total price for that bucket of clicks was $11. That now can go through to the BI, Business Intelligence, or reporting system. Again, these are SQL servers, but highly partitioned. They have much more volume than the campaign management system, but unlike campaign, they're not OLTP. We store vast amounts of data on a partition system for OLAP and cube processing. And this goes all the way down to the keyword grain. We've got a blowout of the record at the bottom there, some of the data elements that we have in that record so we can connect the dots. Who's the publisher? On whose inventory, on whose site was or real estate was the ad shown? Could be an app, could be a web page, could be a mobile device, doesn't really matter. And who was the advertiser? Who was paying for it? What are some of the measures? Medium in this case would mean search, content, display, mobile, local, various channels. And then keyword. We actually have keyword level reporting. All those billions of keywords we have history for, and you can actually get that data back. So now if you're a large online retailer who uses our system via the APIs, you're pulling data out of there absolutely as fast as you can. And the SLA here is a handful of hours. So by the time you inject the data in the top, and now you're getting data back about what was actually clicked on, and then you go to your own site and you see what did they actually buy, you can turn around and find out which keywords are hot and up your bids for those. Put those back into the system and start making sure that the good keywords are converting. We continue the compression along. We boil away keywords, which gives us about a 1,000-fold reduction in size, where it goes into the billing system where we do invoicing or credit card swiping depending on the payment structures we have with you. We also do revenue recognition for our own internal purposes. We also do some fine-grained budget pause or budget adjustments. And why would we do that? It is possible that 3 or 4 redirect servers hear your clicks at the same time and shut off your budget in the delivery engine. Might have gone over by 1 or 2. Well, over here, what we'll do is we'll actually make sure that we don't go a penny over your budget. So if your budget was $100 and we went to 102, we'll give you $2 back, because that's how we're going to make sure that we honor what you gave us as instructions as an advertiser. So that was a flyby of paid search. Now let's take a look at display. So in display advertising, remember, these are those banner ads. These are ones where the user comes to the site but doesn't necessarily self-disclose anything. They didn't type a keyword for us. These are negotiated. Now, for the sake of this picture, for the data flow, like things are shown together. So we're going to start in the upper left with a similar thing, campaign management, just like we did in search. The data that we put in, though, is a little bit different. I'm going to have an impression goal. I didn't do that in search. In search, I gave you a $1 budget not to exceed. In search, I gave you keywords. Over here, I give you placements and targeting data. Targeting data tends to be a little bit richer on this side because I don't have keywords to go off of. So I really want to care about people who have this lifestyle, which is derived by cookie history or other factors. Behavioral targeting sorts of things where, okay, they've gone to these sites, they participated in these sites, I can learn about them, and now I think you're part of this segment, I'm going to show you that ad. In this world, primarily the price is negotiated and typically CPM. That's how things are today. Going forward, we do see these things coming together, but this is the state of things as it is today. Moving on, once your campaign is entered, the data, as in search, drops to a set of delivery engines that are also single-digit millisecond in their response. And rather than running a real-time auction, what these are doing is balancing the inventory and impression goals and targeting optimization for what people asked for. If your targeting is so precise, there might only be 10 people that meet that. So it might have to broaden things slightly to make sure you hit your impression goal. So it's optimizing inventory versus targeting and the available traffic that it has. Now, the ad call here, again, could be from anywhere. It could be from a mobile device, could be from a Win32 app, it could be from a web page. The most obvious example is the MSN network, where we serve most of these ads. Now, in this case, we have a choice about how to look at how we log things. In the world of CPM, I can listen to it directly from the server. I showed the ad. But the ad may not always get across all of the internet and make it to its target destination. That 3P down there in the corner means third party. The ad could have been served or listened to via a third party. Many of you might have heard of the Aquantive purchase that we made. They do third-party ad serving, which is they'll do, in this case, the system that represents Microsoft and MSN is considered first party. It's our own inventory. We manage that. A system like Atlas can say, I'm going to manage a campaign across the internet. And I've got a slide on that in just a moment. And I can listen to numbers that are more objective than the ones that the publisher says. And advertisers might demand that. And that can be done via an intermediary. Another one is to actually have something like a one-pixel clear GIF callback that goes down with the ad and calls back to say, I actually made it to the browser. These are all variations on a theme to make sure that an impression actually got there. Doesn't mean it was looked at, but it means it got there. In this model, we still have, we have the same amount of log files. We have enormous rivers of data flowing in that go through a similar set of pipelines that do aggregations and joins to make sure that we get the right data in. The display report system is very much like the Ad Center report system. SQL servers, again, highly partitioned. The pipelines, again, are the proprietary grid computing solution that we got from Microsoft Research. And going forward, we're increasingly looking at things like Red Dog and others as they become available, or are available. Everything on this page predates that by several years, though, so there's a lot of infrastructure that we've built that does a lot of cloud computing as well. And again, we have a similar case with negotiated billing, where I'm going to be doing invoicing, revenue feeds, etc. One other pivot in this world is that customers can be billed on schedule or on delivery. Some advertisers want so much predictability that I'm going to spend this much every month. Hit your target. And if you don't hit it, give me a credit. Or give me a make good order for next month. In search, it's all bill on delivery. We don't know who's going to win the auction. We don't know who's going to click. When it happens, you get billed on it. There's no notion of a promise. Your bill is always going to be $100 a month. In search, that's actually common, where people say, bill me on schedule, and if delivery is different, make up the difference later. I want to pay and hit my budget target every month over month. As an agency, I might need that predictability in how I spend money. So the scope here of what's in this picture, I alluded to a moment ago as owned and operated. Live Search and the MSN Network are both our properties. What if you wanted a campaign that spanned properties that we don't own? This is where Aquanav or Atlas Media Console, would come in, where I've drawn the Microsoft ecosystem there in the middle. But now as an advertiser, you might want to have an ad going across various technology sites. And they all have their own infrastructure. And so that's where a system like Atlas comes in. It can talk to us or anybody else out on the internet and make sure that you get the reach that you want. So now there's the notion of first-party advertising, which is the Microsoft ecosystem, or third-party, which is anywhere in the world that you want to send that ad. And increasingly, that could be online or offline. I'll come back to that in a bit. Let's go through content ads now, or contextual. In this model, we've got publishers coming to the system and declaring to us what inventory they have for sale. The most common example here is I've got a blog, and I want to put an ad on the side of it. Here we go. The first step would be sign up. I provision myself into the system, and I'm going to give you data about what it is that I think I'm selling. Websites, channels, which are a custom targeting or tagging mechanism that lets you report on your data any way you want. Ad units. Ad unit is the term that we use for the actual space that needs to be filled. So there's a hole on my site that's 700 by 300. Please fill it. There's another one here, there's another one here, and on the next page. So that's my inventory of things for sale. Now here we have contextual delivery. This is an interesting one. This represents a set of systems. In fact, all of these delivery engine boxes here represent literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of machines across data centers around the world. It's a very big, big operation. Contextual delivery is going to go out, once you've defined your websites and your URLs where we're going to place these ads, they're going to go scrape them and pull the content out and derive keywords. There's nobody here doing search. This is about monetizing non-search inventory, but using something that's more specific than perhaps just where you've been recently. The premise is that if I'm looking at a site, if I'm interested in the content of the site, if the ads are related to the content, there is going to be a higher relevance factor there. And so they'll go through there and do keyword extraction. We have keyword extraction engines that will pull data in. And you see there's a little bidirectional arrow between content and auction. The auction is where the advertiser bidded keywords are. This is what people are willing to pay. Now I've got the publisher-derived keywords. Right? So they were typed in the case of search. Now they're derived. And now we do the matching again to decide what ads to show. Okay, so that's a key concept of what goes on in the contextual world. And again, these are also very fast, running all the time, lots of nines of uptime, that sort of thing. We support any pricing model here, although CPC is currently most prevalent in industry. We are hearing a desire to move to a CPM-based, where you can bill based on the impression. If I'm doing brand advertising or something, I might want to pay differently. There's also a publisher editorial process that makes sure that your site is in fact appropriate for us to be doing business with you. I didn't draw that in the picture. It's similar to the one for advertiser. Again, we have clicks in this case. Somebody clicked on your ad. And now we've got the pivot where I need to pay a publisher and bill an advertiser. So the purple and the green here are meant to indicate I've got a mix of advertiser and publisher data that's coming together. We do a similar amount of fraud logic. And here there's another twist to it where an unscrupulous publisher could click on their own site. And that's money straight to them. So if they put a bot out there and start clicking away, the check actually goes up. Thankfully, that's something that we can generally filter out and make sure an advertiser is not paying for and we're not paying a publisher for. So that's an interesting area where there's tons of algorithms, people from Ad Labs and Microsoft Research doing a lot of data mining, machine intelligence types of things to go figure out what's real and what isn't. Another set of compression through pipelines and reporting. This is common with what we saw in advertiser on both search and display. This is publisher-centric reporting. So now you might want to know, how's my site performing? And when I put this content up versus that content, did I get a higher lift? Was the CPC higher? Remember we saw that bid density stuff earlier? Maybe if I was going to do a review on a digital camera, if one of them's hotter than another, I'll pick that one first and I might actually get a higher price. So I can choose my content if I want to target it to how I'm going to get paid. And now I'm actually going to split. I'm going to say I've got $10 that I need to bill an advertiser, and then I multiply that by some payout percentage, P, and then I pay that to the publisher. So now we've got knowledge about who to pay as well as who to bill. And so now this is about syndication of advertising out onto properties that are not necessarily owned and operated by Microsoft. Now it's different than the display breadth that we saw from Atlas. That was pushing your campaign out, but that wasn't necessarily getting you paid. That was getting the publisher paid. That was linking up publishers and advertisers. In this case, this is allowing us to go out to anybody who wants to have an ad shown in something that they've done, be it a blog, be it an app, be it whatever, and allow that person to show up and not necessarily know how to go after display salespeople. I don't know how to go sell this. Well, if I plug in my demand, as I saw in the picture where we match up supply and demand with those two delivery engines, if I've got something I want to monetize, I plug it in here, and it's available to the automated auction, which has access to all of the people who want to buy on a keyword basis, and it puts those two together. So that's an interesting difference. So now that was a quick flyby of search, content, and display. If we move ahead, integration is something that our customers are asking us to do, and we believe it looks something like this. And I've gone ahead and extended it offline as well. All right? So this is a forward-looking picture about if you're an advertiser and you have a campaign, you don't want to necessarily have to differentiate between online, offline, search, display content. Here are the people I want to reach. I want your ad platform to help me reach them. And in fact, if I have creatives, which is a term for, like, say, an image that you would show in a GIF ad, I might use the same creative in print as I do online. Different file size for different resolutions, but it's the same picture that I took. We're actually hearing these things. I have the same video team producing the streaming video as well as what goes on TV. Right? So if I want to put these things together, we should be enabling that. So in this case, I might have a campaign where I have a shared budget across search, display, content, local, mobile, print, whatever. Now you could certainly choose to split on those. If I have different departments that do search and display buying, that's fine. You can always create two campaigns. But if you want to put them together, that's something we're going to enable. So this is about giving the advertisers choice. And for the publishers, it's about a richer set of tools to represent inventory and to have targeting. And let's say that I want to go beyond just having the content of my site being used for deriving keywords. What if I want to say I belong to a vertical called technology sites? And I only want advertisers from technology and sports and financial services to show up on my site because they have the highest yield. I don't want somebody from entertainment. I don't want somebody from health or whatever. Being able to more finely tune who you want to get into your system because you want to maximize yield. Some of the other key concepts, we went through shared creatives, on-off network delivery. Exposing as a platform is a big one because, as Aaron alluded to in the previous picture, as soon as you go off-network, connecting the dots gets very manual. And something I didn't cover in this deck is what's upstream of actually placing the campaign, the whole RFP process, et cetera. Those are all very manual processes. So exposing this as a platform creates a huge opportunity for tool builders to go out there and help automate the rest of this picture. So now, there's a network effect here, and perhaps you've heard of AdECN or the exchange that's in pilot mode right now. Let's say that we've got the network that we just went through on the upper left, and a publisher has a goal of $5 CPM on this inventory, and we don't happen to have the eyeballs for sale locally to hit that target. If he's hooked into an exchange that talks to other networks, there might be an advertiser over there who's willing to pay for that segment who can't find it locally. So an exchange is about helping sell other things that are otherwise hard to monetize. And here it's really being modeled like a stock exchange. It's a flat fee basis. It's not an interested party. It doesn't get a percentage of the CPM, that sort of thing. So this is something that's very nascent and forming, but that's definitely out there on the horizon. Okay, a data tour. Let's look at some of the data elements underneath this. And this is going to build up to some of the API calls that would be available for folks like you going forward. In this model, I've got an advertiser with an agent. The customer object in this case represents a bricks and mortar company to us. We don't tag a customer as an advertiser or a publisher because you can be both to us. The account structure underneath it, the one that's shown in orange, really is your relationship with us. Are you an advertiser? If so, what currency is that relationship in? Because I could have a USD and a Canadian currency, for example. Do I have an agent? If so, what's their percentage? It so happens that the account is the same grain we hang the invoice on, or if you're a publisher where we hang the check. We'll look at that in the next slide. And underneath that, we see campaigns, ad groups, and think orders, order items again, back in the e-commerce example. This is just your instructions to us about what you want to do. Here are the things I want to go buy. And underneath ad groups, I can have ads, which include the text, target URL parameters. We do parameter substitution, so you could put a number in there that when they actually land on your site, you can parse that string and actually say, oh, look at that. That's the keyword. I just connected the full loop of the data. As well as keywords and bid prices. If we flip over to the publisher side, again, we've got a customer at the top of this. In this case, each customer is single purpose, but you could be both. Again, the relationship is established at the account. We set up things like currencies and agencies, and in this case, that's where we hang the check. The sites are something that you can define. They're hung off the customer because they can be shared across accounts. You might be monetizing parts of them in various ways. Underneath an account, we've got channels, which again is user-defined reporting tags, so that I might want to report on a given set of sites in a way so that when it goes through the pipeline, I can see the cubes and the aggregations in a way that's meaningful to me, not in a way that Microsoft defined. So it gives the users the ability to define the groupings of how they want this stuff to be rolled up. Ad units, again, are related to the actual slots for sale. That's just the term we use for them. And then targeting is also underneath there. And so now if we connect the dots, remember we had those pipelines? Here's a record coming out of the pipeline, and here's how we connect the dots. I can say, wow, this bucket of clicks was worth $10. There happened to be 10 of them. The advertiser account was A2, so I'm going to add $10 to that invoice. And the publisher account happened to be A4, and I'm going to multiply that by their payout percentage and add that to their pending check. And we do this tens of millions of times every day. So this is how we connect the dots between the two. Reporting does the same thing. Reporting will do the same thing to put the keyword level reporting or the site tracking on, etc. So this is how the fact data coming in the bottom gets married up with the dimension data above. If you've worked with usage-based systems in the past, previously when I was in live meeting, it looks just like telco billing. I got call detail records coming in, I put them on the bills, I do the right thing. Very high flow, 24/7 uptime kind of operation. So now, plugging into the advertising ecosystem, if we take that whole ecosystem and compress it into the middle of this shell, we've got a UI and an API that surround it. And the APIs that we have today, for example, cover campaign management, publisher, reporting, as well as ad delivery, making ad calls. And so capabilities of apps that can be written against these, if we look at these, you can do keyword and bid management, bring your own targeting. You can extract performance data to use to fine-tune how you go back and change bids. You could build fat clients. You could build web apps. Publish assets for sale. I could upload GIFs. I could upload creatives or videos that I'm actually going to be letting other people use. What do the APIs actually look like? So these are an example of the APIs. The URL is at the bottom if you want to go check it out on MSDN afterwards. In this case, this is following the same structure we went through with the advertiser. I've got campaigns, ad groups, keywords, ads, and a target, or targeting. And I've shown a sample, an abridged sample of the campaign object. And that you can see some of the things that we master in here, like your budget type. Is conversion tracking enabled? That's like CPA enabling. What is your budget? What is your negative keywords or something that I don't want to join on? So if I was, I don't know, selling Spears, I wouldn't want Britney Spears to join in that. So I don't want to pay for that keyword, so put that in the negative. Like, I want Spears, but not those. So those are something that you can associate here. Time zone. What time zone is this actually being run in so I can reach the audience while they're awake? Those sorts of things. Each of these objects, ad groups, keywords, ads, has a similar structure. And again, once you sort of get over you have the mental picture of what's going on here, fairly intuitive to deal with. Now, if we step back for a minute, I listed a bunch of capabilities a minute ago. If we classify those, developers can build a couple of kind of ads that talk to our platform. One would be apps that manage ads. Ads are inventory. So I actually want to provide a UI that lets people manage their inventory in a better way. I want to interface it with somebody else's back-end reporting system so I can automate bid pricing, right, which some of our largest companies do. Some of our largest customers will go through performance data, come back and make 100,000 bid updates in a weekend. Right? That's clearly a programmatic interface. Another set are apps that show ads. So now an example of the former. This is a desktop tool that Aaron spoke about. This is Ad Center Desktop. This is in beta right now. This is for power users. It lets them do bulk operations that are difficult to do on the web. If I want to do a bulk change across 10,000 keywords, tough to do in a web UI. But here it enables download, bulk operations, and upload. So it's a very interesting set of tools. And architecturally on the right, you can see we're talking through an API layer. Right? So instead of going to the UI, I go to the API. Underneath that, our business logic in the mid-tier is agnostic. I'm still editing keywords. I still need to make sure you're authenticated, do all the right stuff, and then store it in the database. So we're architecting to make sure that apps outside can talk to our platform in as rich a way as our own UI does. An example of apps that show ads, as opposed to managing ads, we've got a pilot with Silverlight streaming right now. If you go to silverlight.live.com, you can learn more about that, where you can develop an app in Silverlight, deploy it on Windows Live with streaming by Windows Live, make ad calls to our contextual product, and get paid. So this is out there now, and this is an interesting example of changing the paradigm a bit about interfacing with our product. So wrapping up, if we look at this picture, and we're not going to read it now, but if I just look at a couple of components in there now, and I see something like campaign management, search, contextual, etc., starts to make sense now. We've seen the data flow. If I look at ad delivery, if I look at reporting, if I look at data processing or ETL through our pipelines, if I look at publishers in the lower left, search, content, software apps, okay, we've started to decode this picture. And for fun, here's the route we took through the map. A couple of takeaways here as we're running out of time. We covered a lot of stuff. We covered a lot of ground through search, content, and display. Conversely, there's a lot of stuff out there we didn't cover yet. It wouldn't fit in one talk. So what we didn't cover in great depth was publisher inventory management. How do you represent a complex set of websites for sale? So that's another set of topics that we could do another day. So with that, please remember to fill out your evaluations, and we've got some time left for questions. Yes? If you bid for a keyword, is it exclusive? What do you mean by that? Yes. It's an open auction. Anybody who bids on that keyword, who has budget remaining, who has the same targeting. Let's say you're in a given geo that nobody else is bidding on. I'm bidding in the US and you're bidding in France. If I'm not bidding in the same place as you, I won't be competing with you. But everybody else that's in France would be competing with you. We actually show a list of rankings. So there's actually, I don't know what the number is, 5, 8, 10, how many we show per page. But there are multiple. If you click the next button when you do search, there could be 10 pages of search results. Some number of those will be monetized. So there will be a list of ranked, if you will, winners. The winner is, in fact, the one that got clicked because they went to your website. But that might be the second or the third listing down. You want to be the top listing, but the way to get there is to have relevance and have the right bid level. So we don't do a ton with offline today in the sense of traditional print media and television and things like that. We do have some ad-funded software going on that's different than, say, Messenger, which is more of an always connected thing. Software like Works, where you might be offline for a while, but it could still show ads, and those need to sync up later on. So there is a disconnected scenario with what we call ad-funded software, or AFS. So that does have the notion of giving a batch of ads to show while disconnected, and then learning what was actually presented for later billing and reporting. It's a local sort of runtime engine that was developed by the ad team. Yes? Absolutely. The local slide that I showed earlier on, where if somebody's searching for pizza in Seattle, or you're in a given location, learning the lat long and actually allowing advertisers to target. We have a local ads pilot right now where you can target not just by DMA, direct marketing area, but by lat long and drawing a polygon around the area that you want to bid in. So I want to bid within these 10 blocks of downtown Los Angeles or wherever you're from and say, and I'm going to pay more for that. I might create another ad group that's more broad, and I'll have a lower bid price for that because it's not as valuable to me. And so we absolutely are enabling local advertising. So now local advertising also implies a notion of mobile. And so am I looking at it on a smartphone with a web browser, that sort of thing? So that's in there as well. Coupons are another that we're looking at, so that actually entice people to go the last 2 blocks and close the sale.
Does tying search to display advertising significantly increase the relevance of display?
You mean search or contextual?
Search. So if you tie what someone searched for with what you then show them in a display advert, does it increase the relevance of the display?
So In a traditional display sense, there wasn't a search that happened. You went to a website to read some content.
But you should be able to track the user and know what they searched for previously.
Yes, so depending on whether or not that target display site can share data with your search history, then yes, that could be used for deeper targeting.
Do you know how significant it is of increasing relevance of the display, or is that something you have to do?
It is something that is being measured. The lift, the terms is if the CPM without it was X and the CPM with it is X plus some number, that's the lift that additional richness in targeting gave me, is actually being measured, yes. So if we go back to, whoops, sorry, that was forward. If we go back to this picture, sorry, it's 3 back. The ad calls right now are part of our publisher pilot. It was launched at Mix. And so the ad call here is actually JavaScript that goes up and says, hey, I need an ad. It might also be, since this is contextual, it might also contain keyword hints and things like that, because there might not be a lot of content to scrape in this app. It might even be inappropriate. Right? If you're in a, I don't know, in an app where you're typing something, I may not want to scrape that because that'd be creepy. I see an ad, really, hey, what's that? So here it might be more traditional targeting or keyword hints from the app saying, I want this kind of audience. I'm an app that is dedicated towards, automobile professionals, so I want to have keyword hints that do that, make up a scenario. So in this case, these ad calls are contextual calls made to our publisher product. And each, in this case, software author is set up as a publisher in the system with an account, with a currency, so that we can actually cut them a check. So an author is a publisher in this context. So again, a publisher is much broader than I write content that people read. You might write content that compiles and people run, and you are still a publisher, and in this model, you would get paid for that. Did that answer your question? Yes?
Do you do anything for web TV, like pre-roll or something like that?
Not a lot, not yet. If we look at, because right now, for example, the pre-rolls are fairly uniformly monetized, where no matter how long the pre-roll is, the billing might be the same. It's an impression, or it's a click. Do we actually measure duration? Do we measure appropriateness? Are they embedded in various places in the video? It's still very nascent. I think, wait, I'll spread the wealth first, then you go second. Yes. So there's profiles that are anonymous and there are profiles that are authenticated, and we do both. So an anonymous profile, we can still track all sorts of history with an anonymous GUID. Authenticated might be you've logged into Hotmail, and then you navigated to a participating site where I can share that data and say, okay, I not only know this about you, I know a lot more because you've actually told us stuff.
Can partners be involved in that, or is that just through the live?
That's one where the data is really pretty tightly scoped for privacy reasons. The anonymous data, I think, is a little easier, but on that one, come find me offline and we can go deeper. Oh, by the way, I'm available in the services lounge offline when I'm not presenting, as is Aaron, who presented earlier. Okay, next question? So there are several. One is, well, there's 2 pivots. One is video as an ad. The other is putting ads in video. In the latter, showing an ad that's related to the video, contextual, is tough. Because now I have to read a video with machine learning or something and say this video is about something. It's a lot harder than parsing text and doing sort of algorithms that way. I've got to parse an image, a moving one, and sort of assert what is it about. Maybe there's meta tagging I can use, but realistically, right, so showing a relevant ad is one thing that's tough. The next one is, if it's a pre-roll, for example, do I want to monetize differently based on how long it is? Did the user skip it, or could they skip it? Or, so there are some mechanical challenges. There are others about relevance. In the space of videos as ads, that's an area where we've got a lot more experience. Flash and Silverlight and things like that are ads that you can show. Other questions? And by the way, how long do I have before the next speaker needs to be here? Do I have another 5 minutes? A couple minutes? 5? Okay. Who was next? In the back?
You talked about the partner network. Are you negotiating arrangements, or is it open for the CPC market? You said that putting ads, contextual ads up on partner sites, blogs and so on?
So a couple of different things going on there. With contextual, a publisher will come and register and get ads shown on their site. With the network, within a participating network, which is, I believe, largely negotiated, if we think about Drive or something of that nature, people don't just walk up and say, I'm a network or I want to participate. Publishers might have a minimum bar they want to hit. I want to hit this CPM for this ad unit because I think it's worth that. And if I can't get it locally, I might want to go to that exchange and see if there's anybody else that wants to pay me for it, what I think it's worth. So there's a network effect with publishers. And then with contextual, it's really just about you have inventory that you want to sell, and we're going to do... No, sorry. You are going to sell it to any advertiser that is in our inventory. So if you go to our publisher product and say, I have a site for sale, and we'll go derive keywords and match that up against every advertiser that is in our entire system, of which there are more than a few 100,000, and do keyword matching as though someone had typed those on search. Right, so your site is a bag of keywords that we can now use to say, hey, look at that. Your site is about healthcare. Look at that. Pfizer is a perfect match, and now you have a great or a great price because their bid density on that keyword was really high. Right, that kind of. That one is not. You can show up and say, here I am. Here's my site. Here's my bank account. And when people click on that ad, you get paid. Other questions? Yes. Yes, I would anticipate that. I would anticipate even beyond Silverlight. Yes? I don't have percentages for you off the top of my head. I know that it's something that we go after very aggressively. And there are some things that are very obviously fraud. There are some that are very obviously people. And in the middle, there's questions. And in the spirit of full openness, one of the things that we can do is just tell you, we're pretty sure that's not human. This one we're not sure, so you might want to put a lower bid on it. This one we know is people, so you want to bid that one up higher. So there's this notion of a traffic quality that we're thinking of that can help ease that, because in the middle, it's not an exact science no matter what anybody says on that. So that's an interesting pivot going forward. Other questions? All right. Thanks very much.